Attention, Bear Nation! First, could an offensive coordinator from another team be the key to unlocking our quarterback and lifting our offense? This man is causing a stir on another team with a lethal attack. But is he the right one to lead us in 2025 after 8 consecutive losses? Is it time to bet on a new mind or stick with the old school? Stay tuned to find out. Now, the blow we still haven't digested, the trade of our star quarterback. Is this the reward we deserved? We went from dreaming of a 4th-round pick to settling for a 6th. This is a huge stain in our general manager's book. Does this trade sink us further? And the issue that keeps us up at night, the offensive line. How is it possible that we are still one of the worst units in the NFL with 58 sacks allowed this year? If we don't fix this, our quarterback and any talent won't survive. Our general manager? Someone will have to be held accountable. Okay, Chicago Bears fans. I have something here that's going to raise eyebrows and maybe spark a discussion or two, but do me a favor, listen to everything before jumping to conclusions. Because I'm going to talk about Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and why I think this guy deserves serious consideration to become our next head coach in 2025. How do you see it? Because I tell you this, after 8 consecutive losses, this team has no margin for error. This isn't just football, friends, it's the present and future at stake. Now, let's get to the important stuff. Liam Cohen may not be the sexiest name on the list of potential candidates. Come on, we know the rumors also include people like Ben Johnson from the Lions and Mike Vrabel, the former Titans coach. But this man has something others don't, a recent track record that screams creativity, results, and talent development. And frankly, with Caleb Williams as the centerpiece of our future, isn't this exactly what we need? Let's quickly talk about Cohen's resume because this guy didn't come out of nowhere. He has 14 years of experience working both in the NFL and at the college level, and in the last 4 years, he stood out as a play caller. Yes, Ben Johnson may have more time as an offensive coordinator with the Lions, but what Cohen is achieving with Tampa Bay this year is noteworthy. Because don't tell me you haven't seen how he's revived Baker Mayfield's career. Yes, Baker Mayfield. The same one everyone wrote off years ago. Under Cohen's direction, Mayfield already has 32 touchdown passes, a rating of over 100, and if he keeps it up, he'll surpass 4,000 passing yards this season. And here I ask you, who among you believed Baker Mayfield had this level? I tell you this, no one did, except Liam Cohen. It's obvious this guy knows how to maximize his players' talent, and that's the kind of offensive genius we need to give Caleb Williams the guidance he clearly didn't receive in his rookie season. Because let's be honest, what happened to Caleb this year? Our supposed generational talent got trapped in a broken offensive system, so broken that coordinator Shane Waldron ended up being fired after week 11. Caleb went from being a promise to a problem, and that's not just his fault. It's the system's fault for not knowing how to use him. That's where Cohen comes in. This man not only understands quarterbacks, but he has proven experience in getting the best out of them from the start. Look at what he did in 2022 when he worked with the Rams. That season, Matthew Stafford was out half the time, and Baker Mayfield came out of nowhere, literally, 48 hours before a game, and they still managed to win games. In fact, his debut with Mayfield included that legendary 98-yard drive to win a game. 98 yards with a quarterback who didn't even know the playbook. That's not luck, friends. That's preparation, knowing how to adjust, and being flexible when things don't go your way. And here's where I say, isn't this exactly what we need in Chicago? Because our problem isn't just Caleb, it's the scheme. We need someone who can work with what we have and build from there, someone who doesn't come in with a single idea in mind and tries to force it on the players. Also, let's talk about Tampa's offense this year. Not only have they lost Chris Godwin to injury in Week 7, but they were also without Mike Evans. What did Cohen do? He adjusted, modified, and that attack is still producing. They already have over 2,000 rushing yards and are top 4 in the league in both passing and rushing yards. Moreover, they've scored 30 points or more in 7 games this year. In 7! This is the kind of balanced and effective offense that can transform the Bears into a force to be reckoned with. And don't tell me we don't have the talent. Of course, we do. DJ Moore is a respectable WR1, Rome Odunze has potential, Cole Kmet is reliable as a tight end, and DeAndre Swift as a running back is a dangerous weapon. Tell me that's not something Cohen could work with? Because I tell you, if this man can build a scheme that works for Caleb Williams, then the whole team will automatically look better. So, here's the question, friends. The search for the next head coach is not optional. It's the most important moment for the Chicago Bears in years. Liam Cohen may not have the weight of names like Mike Vrabel, but he offers something others don't: vision, creativity, and a track record of getting the best out of his players, especially quarterbacks who, like Williams, come into the league with all the weight of the world on them. So I ask you, do you think Liam Cohen is the right guy to lead this team? A young offensive genius who can unlock Caleb Williams, or do we go again for a safe figure from the old guard? Because I tell you, this decision will define our future, and I like the potential that Liam Cohen brings to the table. Remember when Justin Fields was the future of the Chicago Bears? Well, here we are, at the end of that chapter, and the final verdict on the compensation for his trade is a direct blow to our patience as fans. I ask you, was this what we expected when we traded our former franchise quarterback? Because, friends, I tell you this does not look good. To quickly recap, Justin Fields was traded to the Steelers in March. At that time, many in Bear Nation, myself included, and I don't mind admitting it, thought, well, it's not ideal, but if Fields has a couple of good years in Pittsburgh and plays more than 51% of his snaps this year, we can get a 4th-round pick. But now, partly due to injuries and the fact that the Steelers decided to put in Russell Wilson instead of Fields after Week 6, here we are, facing the cold reality. We will only get a 6th-round pick in the 2025 draft. 6th round? Seriously? I ask you this, is this the kind of return we should accept for someone who was a 1st-round pick for us, someone who was once seen as the savior of the Bears? Because I don't think so. Honestly, friends, this is a low blow, not just for Bears fans, but also for Ryan Poles, who was already in the hot seat for the decisions he's made in recent years. And this is another stain on his record. For those who have lost track of Justin Fields' feats this year, listen to this. In Pittsburgh, he started with a 4-2 record, accumulated 1,106 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, and ran for 289 yards with another 5 touchdowns in 10 games. Okay, that doesn't sound bad, right? His completion percentage of 65.8% is the highest of his career. But here's the problem. Fields couldn't stay healthy and available, which at the end of the day is costing the Bears a better draft position. Don't get me wrong, it's not that a 4th-round pick would save the franchise, but a 4th-round pick is still within the range where you find impact players. A 6th-round pick, well, let's say there's less margin for error. How do you think Ryan Poles feels now? Because I tell you this, his decisions regarding Fields, from drafting him to the trade, and now this compensation, are not helping him at all at a time when his job is already being questioned. Let's be clear, this was not a move that benefited Chicago much. Honestly, the Steelers come out as winners here, even if Fields doesn't become their future quarterback. Why? Because in the end, it only cost them a relatively low price to shine a player who still had potential. At least they got some productivity in those 6 games he gave them. We, on the other hand, are left with an empty spot and a 6th-round pick that will probably be more of a gamble than a solid investment. Now, I don't use this to come here and say, fire Ryan Poles right now. No, because that's panicking. But I ask you, Bear Nation, don't you think every move he's made in recent years is now under an even bigger microscope? Because the truth is this, we, as a franchise, have been looking for stability for a long time, and we are still on shaky ground. And that brings me to another critical point. Perception matters a lot. If we want to attract a top-level head coach this offseason, one who can come in and develop Caleb Williams or revive this team, decisions like this don't help Poles' case. Potential candidates will look at this, evaluate how things have been handled, and some might question if it's the right place to build something lasting. And how do you fix that narrative? With results and with successful draft picks. It's that simple and that complicated at the same time. So here's the scenario. The Bears have to maximize every draft pick, from the 1st to that blessed 6th-round pick we now have thanks to this trade. Because frankly, friends, I don't want to be here again in 2 years saying, remember that Justin Fields trade? Another mistake by the Bears. Enough already. So, Bear Nation, here's the question for you. Do you think this trade, in retrospect, was the right move? And more importantly, What do we think about Ryan Poles' work so far? Because I tell you this, we are reaching a moment of accountability in this franchise. Is it time to clean house, or do we need to give him more time to justify certain decisions? Let's talk about a truth that keeps us up at night. That offensive line we have in Chicago is, frankly, a disaster. And if you thought we would come into 2025 with hope and magical solutions to fix our weakness in the trenches, well, I have news for you. This is going to take a lot longer than we'd like to accept. I ask you, how much more are we willing to endure this level of incompetence? Because, let's be honest, the problem with our offensive line is no longer just about the players. It starts much higher up. First, let's be clear, Ryan Poles has to bear some of the blame here. In the preseason, the guy was proudly saying that this was the deepest offensive line he had ever seen. Oh, sure, deep. Yes, deep like a puddle, because clearly that perception was totally wrong. What we've seen this year is not a deep line, it's a line that falls apart week after week. How did this team become one of the worst in the league? The numbers don't lie. The Bears are tied with the Browns as the teams that have allowed the most sacks in the entire NFL, with a staggering total of 58 sacks. 58! And yes, sure, it's not all the offensive line's fault. We know Caleb Williams is taking too long to throw the ball on many plays. But don't tell me those numbers aren't also a direct consequence of a line that simply isn't up to par. And that's not all. Because besides not protecting the quarterback, our line isn't good for the running game either. We are ranked 26th in yards per attempt, with a miserable average of 4.1 yards per carry. I say it now and I say it loud, this line is good for nothing. And what do we do about it? Because aside from right tackle Darnell Wright, who was a solid investment in the 2023 draft, every position on this line should be under review. Literally all of them. But here's the bad news for those hoping this would be fixed quickly. It's not going to happen. Let's talk about Trey Smith. Many of us have heard rumors that he could be a great addition to strengthen the interior of the line in free agency, but according to reports, he won't even hit the open market. The Chiefs are ready to pay him whatever it takes or use the franchise tag to make sure he doesn't go anywhere. So, there goes one of the best available options. What does that mean? We're back to fighting over scraps in free agency or praying for a stroke of luck in the draft. But don't think the draft will be our salvation either. According to what Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune reports, it's not a good year for left tackles in the first round. Yes, there's a lot of talk about Will Campbell from LSU, but do me a favor, the guy has short arms, and there are already several people within the NFL who believe he's been overrated. He's not the player who's going to magically solve our line problems for the next 5 years. So, what's the plan? Biggs projects that the Bears will probably end up adding 3 offensive linemen this offseason. Maybe they'll sign 1 or 2 interior linemen in free agency and draft 1 or 2 linemen after the first round. But honestly, how much longer will it take to rebuild these trenches? Because the reality we face not only affects the offense, but also the defense. Our defensive line isn't making much noise either, and with all these gaps, there's no happy ending in sight in the short term. This raises a critical question. Is it worth keeping Ryan Poles in charge of the process? Because I tell you this man is entering his 4th year with the Bears, and we're still dreaming of competent offensive lines. What message does that send? Because I ask you, can a team that constantly fails to win in the trenches be truly competitive in this league? The answer is obvious. Now, I'm not here just to assign blame. There's also room to understand the complexity of the problem. Rebuilding offensive lines and defensive lines, while we're at it, is a complicated process that takes time. I get it. But here's the detail. The patience of the fans, the players, and believe me, the owners, has a limit. Poles is already under the microscope, especially with the decisions about the next head coach and the draft picks. If he doesn't hit the mark with both things this offseason, Bear Nation, I'll be realistic, it's hard to imagine him keeping his job much beyond the 2025 season. So, Bear Nation, here's the big question for you. How confident are you that Ryan Poles is the guy who can rebuild not just the offensive line, but this entire team from the ground up? Because right now, we're still stuck in a cycle of promises and broken hopes. How much longer are we going to tolerate this mediocrity? Leave your comments below. I want to know. Is it time to look for new faces in the front office, or do we give him one last chance? Alright, Bear Nation. Here's my big initial question. Is Liam Cohen really the offensive coach this team needs to fully unlock the potential of someone like Caleb Williams? Or are we still in the eternal search for something safe and traditional? Give your opinion, because these decisions define our future. And speaking of decisions, what do you think of the direction Ryan Poles is taking? Do you think his vision and changes have been the right ones for this team? Looking back at this process, is Poles ensuring long-term success or just prolonging the cycle of false hope we've lived through for years? Lastly, I want to know, how do you feel about the rebuilding of our team? Do you think we have the necessary leadership to get out of the rut and finally meet expectations? Patience has a limit, Bear Nation. Is this the decisive moment, or are we still trapped in a loop of mediocrity? Now, if you love the Bears and want to be part of this space where we analyze, debate, and share our passion for this team, this is the moment. Subscribe to the channel, join the Bear Nation family, and let's build a community full of genuine passion and real analysis together. Leave your comment, share this video, and activate notifications so you don't miss anything. Thank you for being part of this family. See you in the next video, Bear Nation. Bear down!